Is rush hour back to, a portion of where it was? People are starting to look at that.
Did you watch the rest of that meeting? The planning board?
No,
Oh,
no,
you
I
didn't?
I just dropped in briefly.
Yeah, it went to like 10:30.
Hey, Cindy, how are you?
Yeah. It was 10:30?
Yeah.
Yeah, there used to be a series of them.
Mm-hmm.
For that property.
Yeah.
That was just an introduction of some of the,
That was their first presentation, yeah.
No, they're good.
On a beehive?
I'm gonna sit back here.
Hmm?
Is that the Wells Fargo?
I can't tell who's talking. Oh, yes, the Wells Fargo site, yeah.
Beehive.
Beehive?
That's the name of the.
oh, yeah, beehive.
Oh. My husband wants to bring bees in. He wants to have a beehive.
Where they got that name from?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I just, yeah.
Just make sure you pull your mics as close as you can to you and speak into them the whole time.
Good evening. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. Please all salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Burstein?
Here.
Ms. Prupus?
Here.
Ms. Stahl-Eglo?
Here.
Mr. Wasserman?
Here.
Mayor Lieberberg?
Here.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Motion.
moved. Oh.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? May I have a motion to approve the September 1st, 2020 Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
May I have a motion to approve the September 15th Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Committee reports. I'll start. We currently have 230 cases of COVID-19 in the township. Essex County is reporting 28,070 cases. 83% have recovered. Please remember these are cumulative, and those residents that have recovered are still part of the count. As you know, Governor Murphy has mandated masks be worn at all times when social distancing is not possible. Essex County continues to offer free testing for all residents multiple times per week. Please register at essexcovid.org. Of the 35 cases between September 1st and October 28th in Millburn Township, 54% of those cases were of individuals below 30 years of age. As you know, our numbers are increasing, and we must be vigilant about social distancing and mask wearing. Today, Essex County reported 689 new cases. This is the highest number since April 7th, which was 585. Main Street is now reopened for vehicular traffic. This coincides with the reopening of our 5th through 12th grade in-person learning at the Washington School, Millburn Middle, and Millburn High School. We will monitor the weather, and if there's an exceptionally warm day on the weekend in the near future, the Township Committee will review on an ad hoc basis. Please remember to wear your masks at all time in accordance with Executive Order 163 in public spaces. Additionally, Governor Murphy has now put some restrictions in place and a 10 p.m. curfew for all bars and restaurants with indoor seating. This does not apply to outdoor seating. No indoor bar seating at all. And there will be no interstate travel for K through 12 teams. College and professional teams are unaffected. The November 3rd general election was well executed, and the number of participants was the highest in an election thus far. I'm very grateful to our township clerk and assistant township clerk for all their assistance in making the day as seamless as possible. Approximately 10,600 residents voted. Fall curbside leaf collection began on October 19th. Please check the township website. Leaf collections are the same as recycling and trash pickup. TWP millburnnj.us/DWP pamphlet. On Friday, November 20th at 5:30 p.m., the Chamber of Commerce will be holding their Winter Walk event, lighting up the park. All residents, businesses, and guests are invited to attend. Hope you'll be able to join us. Beginning on Thursday, November 26th, the township will offer free parking until January 3rd. Please dine, shop, explore local. The 4-panel mural that is under construction for the pathway by Goldberg's Deli is near completion and will be installed in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, somebody could show the, I don't know if you can get a close-up, Jimmy, on that, but
That's not the same one.
no, that's something else.
Yeah, that's something
That,
else.
this is this is the Goldberg.
I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, that's,
We anticipate an unveiling ceremony on Friday, December 4th. Time to be confirmed. Please stay tuned. We're very excited to bring more public art to the township. Special thanks to Dan Fenelon for his creative talents. And on that note, we do have some more art that's coming along. Anybody have the other one? Thank you. That we can put on the screen, Jimmy, I think, right? The CETA and Art Advisory Committee have selected a piece of artwork for Taylor Park. As you know, this process began back in January with meetings with the township engineer, rec department, our town forester, all to review a suitable location at Taylor Park. A site was selected along Main Street. Mr. Molman engaged in numerous conversations with Danielle Bursk at New Jersey Council of the Arts, how best to facilitate the process. She recommended that the township reach out and get expressions of interest, which was followed by 5 finalists that submitted RFPs. All interested artists submitted proposals for 3D objects that would incorporate the township's history, referencing the mill wheel, as well as highlighting community engagement and diversity. The call was posted on a variety of New Jersey websites and New Jersey Council for the Arts. 39 artists submitted expressions of interest. Members of both CETA and Art Advisory were consulted. Art Advisory participated. They already had 3 successful arts installations in town, 2 at the library, 1 at Greenwood Gardens. We then Zoomed interviewed with over a dozen artists. 5 were selected for an RFP and a $500 stipend. And after a thoughtful and deliberative process, multiple rounds of votes, Michael Cooper's, as it appears on the screen, All Together Now was selected. The revised artwork included a raised platform that will allow a practical element for seating all around the installation. I'm happy to report that DPW will handle site preparations, including excavation and the installation of pavers. A revised draft contract has been submitted to our legal team for review with the intention of authorization on December 15th. The total cost with the seating platform is $26,905. At our next meeting on December 1st, the artist Michael Cooper will be presenting All Together Now to the Township Committee. Special thanks to Jesse Molman for his exhaustive research, insight, and tenacity in keeping this project on target. He engaged all the stakeholders and coordinated and organized all our meetings. A monumental task, and we are grateful. I'd like to also thank the artists and all the residents from both committees who attended numerous Zoom calls and participated in vigorous discussions concerning the artwork. Thank you. And now to my fellow committeemen, members. Who would like to go first? Richard? Diane?
Okay, I'll
Go
start.
ahead, you can go first.
Okay, first of all, I see Sanjeev is in the audience. Congratulations to you and Maggie. We look forward to having you up here next in January. The mayor and I sit on the parking utility. The parking utility has not fared well due to the COVID pandemic. There is a large deficit in the township's parking collections. Parking meters were covered for 6 months. We did not start charging for parking until September 1st. Luckily, pre-pandemic, the TC had voted to reduce the 2020 debt payment for the parking deck bond. This has proved fortunate due to the extended impact of COVID, and our debt refinancing in 2021 will actually provide necessary flexibility and reduction in expenses to limit any impact utility users would see in the 2020 year due to a decrease in revenues. Town Hall will be sending out permit renewal letters next week. If you are renewing your yearly business or commuting parking permits, you will receive a 3-month rebate towards your renewal fee. If you are not renewing, you will receive a refund check for the 3 months that Governor Murphy and Cuomo had New Jersey and New York in lockdown. The committee, as the mayor said, will be continuing the policy of free parking from Thanksgiving through January 3rd. The deficit is large, and the month of free parking would not fill the coffers enough to discontinue this policy. We felt it was important for the community and businesses. And, we started the year with a nice, healthy deficit, a nice, healthy surplus. But we must remain vigilant and conservative with our spending initiatives. So I think this should work out fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kupis?
And no reports, Mayor.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I have a few things to report on. The Bid SID had its Halloween event, sponsored its Halloween event, and I think it was a major success. 39 merchants from town participated. There was, I guess, sealed or approved candy was given out to kids. There were I think there were 200 gift bags that were given out to families. This happened on Main Street. There were a lot of happy faces, and we were able to engage, a lot of our merchants in this endeavor. And we give special thanks to Committeewoman Eglo for helping us stuff some bags, I think. So we'll give you a little shout out on that. And it was great, and I think the merchants were really engaging, and the family and kids were happy. So I'm happy to report that. Other than that, the Visioning Steering Committee of our township has met twice already with Perkins Eastman. Perkins has scheduled its first virtual engagement this coming December 3rd. And this is all going to be done virtually on our website. This is going to be also included in a newsletter that's going to be emailed out. There's a lot of great questions, and the survey will be, will include a lot of questions. It'll ascertain a lot of information that I think will be very useful in the visioning process. I also want to thank, all of our volunteers on the visioning committee. They're working really hard, and it's a really very, very important endeavor. The town is, investing a lot of time and effort and funds to, in this effort. So, and lastly, as one of the liaisons to the Board of Ed, I met with Christine Burton, and the mayor popped in, and we reviewed enrollment projections. We kind of looked at where the schools were at. We looked at current development. We want to make sure that our schools are in good, are well positioned for the future. And I have to say that I was very impressed with Dr. Burton and her team.
Thank you. Mr. Fowl, Ms. Burstein.
Oh,
You're on mute, Cheryl. Thank you.
As I say, of course I am. Okay, for the library, there's going to be a virtual fall museum night on December 8th at 7 p.m. Nick Dawes, a Millburn resident, will do a live broadcast from Salmagundi as he discusses the illustrious past of the nearly 150-year-old art club, and he'll discuss why private clubs will play a more important role in post-COVID New York. You have to sign up for it, but there's a lot of space there. So anyone who's interested in museum night, please check out the library, the Friends of the Millburn Library, and you can get information on the library's website. A rec commission met, and they are working on winter programs. They're still trying to figure out winter programs in light of COVID. And that really is my report for the moment.
Thank you. What time is it, December 8th, that movie night?
It's not a movie night.
I'm sorry,
It's-
is the Zoom lecture?
Hang on one second. It is at 7 p.m., December 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes, just to add to Committeeman Wasserman's report on the SID, for anyone who's interested, the next meeting will be on November 17th at 7 p.m., correct, Mr. Wasserman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So also wanted to let everybody know that we had a intern recently do a project for us. If some people may not realize that the township has a veterans walk around town, includes a number of sites, and we will be he actually did it on so that it's mobile capable, and so that if you wish to view those sites or go to those sites, he did a very nice job with it, Michael Sorkin, and we're going to be releasing that tomorrow for Veterans Day. And just a reminder to everybody that Town Hall will be closed tomorrow.
Thank you. Mr. Falcon?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a few quick items. Firstly, I wanted to comment on the inquiry you received from a student who watched the meeting last time, apparently in connection with some school lesson, and inquired as to whether the meeting notice for the last meeting was properly given. The notice for the last meeting was given in accordance with the requirements, legal requirements, and Further, the clerk has given proper notice for every meeting on the meeting schedule that you adopted in January at the reorganization meeting, including up through the present time with the new COVID meeting requirements. I want to respond to your inquiry as to the enforcement of requirements in connection with the development of the Silverman project, which is currently before the planning board. As a body, the township committee doesn't have any involvement in that. That's before the planning board, and they have jurisdiction over it. The planning board, as all planning boards are in connection with all applications, their role is to take the application that has been presented, compare the application to the requirements of the ordinance to make sure that the application fulfills those requirements, and it takes action. If it fulfills it, they grant it. If it does not, they can deny it. They can grant it and impose reasonable conditions on any approval, but basically the township committee is not involved in that process, although you do have two members, of course, who serve on the planning board as members of that board, who also serve on the township committee. But as a body, you don't have any action to take with respect to that matter. Finally, I wanted to report that another mediation session in the affordable housing case was held last Friday. Involved Frank Banish, the special master, the director of the Fair Share Housing Center, and the representatives of the Millburn Township Steering Committee. We've been involved in discussing a lot of issues and providing information back and forth. The particulars of that, as you know, I'm not at liberty to go into because of the judge's order and the direction that the special master gives at the beginning of each mediation session as to confidentiality. But I did want to mention that there is hardly a more complex and mind-numbing subject than the mediation of affordable housing, and that the members of the steering committee, Committeewoman Eglow, Mr. Wasserman, Beth Zoll, the chair of the planning board, Alex McDonald, people of the community ought to know that you all are involved in a very important undertaking that takes a lot of concentration and involvement, and hopefully we can come about a good resolution of that. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Feld. Mr. Feld, if you have a question, will be a time for public comment. Thank you. We now will have a presentation by the Environmental Commission, an update on the ban on single-use plastic. Priya Patel, Environmental Commission Chair. Please come up to the platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lieberberg. Okay, so for today, I am just going to give you an update on what's happening. So on Wednesday, November 4th, Governor Murphy signed into law the strongest plastics legislation in the country. The Plastic Pollution Reduction Act, which is also A 1978 S 864, is now the law of the land in Jersey. This bill is the result of a 6-year-long effort to fight against plastic pollution in our state. With over 130 local ordinances and bipartisan support in the legislature, we've been able to achieve the strongest piece of plastics legislation ever seen. So we're now one step closer to a plastic-free future, and on behalf of the Environmental Commission, I want to thank all of you on the TC for the role you have played in getting us here. So thank you very much. So as of November 5th, we are now on an 18-month countdown to implement a full ban on single-use plastic bags and polystyrene foam food service products. So large stores will be banned from providing paper bags, while small businesses will be allowed to provide paper bags for free, as they always have. Plastic straws will be made available at restaurants and bars by request only. Municipal ordinances that have already been adopted, such as our own towns, will remain in effect until the state law goes into effect in May 2022. Because May 2022 is still a very long way from now, the Environmental Commission is still strongly recommending that the current ordinance be amended as planned. The amendment would greatly clarify the definition of a compliant bag and would therefore help us in pulling even more unrecyclable plastic garbage out of our town's waste stream. So that's where we're at right now. Again, May 2022 is when the state law will take effect. It's really upon, the township committee to decide if they still want to pursue the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't you just stay there for in case members of the township committee have some questions that, Cheryl, do you have a question? Do you want to go first?
I actually have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. So are you recommending what kind of runway, for lack of a better term, in making these, if we made this amendment?
What kind of runway, meaning how long would it take?
Meaning, how long would you give to enact the amendments?
I see. Okay,
Because there will have
so-
to be some changes
Right,
made by
so-
merchants.
So in the proposed amendment that I, along with Ed Hilsenrath, had drafted, he's a member of the commission, we had proposed a 30-day runway. The amendment is pretty straightforward. Again, it just tightens up the definition of the compliant bag. Because as I reported out in the past, there's a handful of large retailers that have found a workaround, right?
Right. I think at the last meeting, you talked about that. So with the new legislation, and I haven't studied it, and I presume you have, if for whatever reason, is it the same definition of bags that you're talking about here as will be in the state legislation?
So the definition is pretty much the same. The key components are stitched handles. The bag is washable and durable. And those are the two primary things. And then in the state law, they've also made some additional requirements around hemp. Our compliant bag definition doesn't include that.
Okay.
But
But the bags that you're concerned about, especially like the yellow ShopRite bags, I think, are a big one. Will those be banned under the state law?
So they would.
Okay.
And in addition, so each of you in your packet should have received kind of basically an overview of the plastic pollution bill. So that kind of just gives you a snapshot of what the bill entails. But in addition to the plastic bags, they would also be banning paper bags,
Right.
which our town does not.
Right, and we're not addressing that in your proposed revisions.
Correct.
Okay.
Currently, we address it in the sense that we are charging a fee
Right.
for that reusable bag. And we're also
Right.
proposing that fee be bumped up to 25 cents.
Okay. All right, those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome back. So, this was all started with Assemblyman McKeon saying that the town should start doing their own resolutions to help push this to a commonality for all towns. So that's what I think is going to happen. But I think because Millburn acted in advance, I think that because this definition works well with what will be expected in 18 months, that I think we should amend the definition to include this. It just makes sense because we're so close and we're ready, so it's going to be done anyway. So I think that we could work towards that and be proactive like we were originally. And it took a long time for even Millburn to get this right. So I think that I would hope that our other members would want to go ahead and add this amended definition into our resolution.
Yeah, I have a question. So do you foresee our enforcement officer taking action? Let's say we pass this, we give notice. I mean, do you think that the town's going to have to engage these the retailers in question? Do you think that we're going to start giving out summonses or whatever we would give out? I mean, do you think that there's going to be friction once we pass this?
I don't anticipate there would be friction. I also don't know what the current workload is of, the code enforcement officer. So what I would anticipate is that, again, because of the unique circumstances of, the COVID pandemic,
Right.
that we would, that the code enforcement officer would probably prioritize his or her work in terms of enforcement. So those large, the big box retailers, the ShopRite, the
Yeah.
Trader Joe's, the Kings, the Walgreens, the CVS, perhaps he or she would spend time, enforcing at those retailers versus trying to go after the small business, the smaller retailers that are, that kind of
Right. I mean,
are
is-
along Millburn Ave and Essex.
Is 30 days enough to, to give notice? I mean, is 30 days?
I feel that 30 days is sufficient because from what we have ascertained, it seems like a lot of retailers in town are already on board with this. And certainly our largest retailer or aggregation of retailers, which is the mall, everyone seems to be on board with not providing single-use plastic bags. It's just really a handful of retailers that are not, or that are, again, they are working within the boundaries of the ordinance, but they found a workaround by providing a thicker film plastic bag as their compliant.
And this will
reusable bag.
clarify things.
Correct.
This will clarify things, and, yeah. And I just want to say that you've done a great job, and your commission has done a great job, for our township, and I just want to thank you, as I try to thank all of our volunteers.
Thank you.
I have a question. In May of 2022, the state is going to be charging 25 cents for a compliant,
No, that is just something that we had proposed.
Okay.
In our amendment, just to kind of strengthen up the disincentive side of the ordinance. The state law will outright ban paper bags at all retailers that are, I believe, 2,500 square feet minimum.
So in May of 2022, this will be amended again to be compliant for the state and no longer allow paper bags.
In May of 2022, all individual municipal ordinances will be overridden, to the best of my understanding, by this state law.
So does that mean
18
that
months.
we don't have to override this? It just goes away, Kit?
Yeah, the state law will supersede.
Right, so do we have to, as a committee, make a formal,
Amendment?
to rescind this? Does the town have to rescind this, or it just gets overridden and just stays in Netherlands?
In
Somewhere.
22, no, it just,
What?
it falls apart as a matter of law. It's
Okay.
superseded, but this amendment that's been suggested, you would have to enact now
Correct.
in order to put it in your existing ordinance.
In 2020.
Yeah.
Or 2021, right?
Right.
And when would it take, when would it take effect,
Which one?
the definition? Like, if we went through with this, when do you think it would take?
So we had proposed a 30-day rollout. So the previous ordinance, we had a 6-month rollout. It was enacted December 2019, and it went into effect in June of 2020. So with this amendment, we had proposed 30 days.
Right. But if we wanted to, we could choose to make it 60 days, 90 days, whatever length of time that we thought would be appropriate.
And we've had no problems with enforcement since this has been enacted, right? It's all been very compliant.
What do you mean, Diane?
That we haven't had our enforcement agent, Mr. Cuomo, having any issues with any of our retailers. He hasn't issued any tickets or summons.
Not at this point.
Yeah.
Also, Lou Agnello is one of the health officers, also an enforcement. He has not either.
Right.
Right.
Cheryl, do you think 30 is too short? Are you suggesting 60?
I mean, look, it depends. When we enacted it originally, one of the purposes, of course, giving it a 6-month ramp up, is to give people the opportunity to sort of get used to it, and get their bags in order or whatever it is that we want, and also to give the merchants time to get their, I guess, ducks in a row as well. I don't know whether 30 days is sufficient or 60 is a better idea. I have no clue in terms of the few merchants that have been doing the workaround. You know, in all fairness to them, they followed the ordinance perhaps to the letter as opposed to the spirit, but they have followed the ordinance. So I don't know. I don't know if 30 is enough or if 60 would be better. I really don't know. But 30 seems like a very short amount of time to me.
I would agree.
I would just, oh, sorry, Alex.
I just wanted to speak to the schedule a little bit.
Alex, can you speak up, please?
So I just want the committee to keep in mind in terms of the ordinance schedule, you may not have enough time to make this amendment in 2020. Therefore, a de facto 60 days or, 90 days or 45 days may actually occur if you introduce in your second meeting in January and adopt in your first meeting in February. So certainly you could give notice to those businesses that are currently not compliant, and as I think Priya said, it's only a handful. So you could give notice now of your intention so that they can make those changes and then enact it with the 30 days. Just a thought.
I thought we had to do this amendment in 2020.
Why?
We haven't introduced the legislation yet.
Oh.
We're just in the discussion.
Oh, okay.
So if we introduce it, it would have to be introduced December 1st with approval on December 15th to get it in 2020.
I just wanted to address one point that Committeewoman Burstein had made regarding 30 days versus 60 days, and would the retailers be ready? I believe there is a ShopRite in one of the shore communities where they do have a ban, and it's a stricter, the definition is much stricter, and they've been able to comply, right? So, and that is the case with many retailers because they have locations in other towns, all the stores in the mall, most of them have stores in California or, other states where they do have bag bans in place. So I wouldn't underestimate the ability of large retailers to ramp up quickly and come into compliance.
I would still be happier with 60 days. I think we're living through strange times, and just to be fair to our retailers, whoever they are, I think 60 days would also give our commission a chance to, to do some education, to send out some paperwork, maybe to go visit some of the retailers to make sure that they know what compliance is. So, and speaking as somebody in retail, I'd like to see it. I'd like 60 days. I don't think it's going to change anything, and it would give us the opportunity, to make sure everything's in place.
Oh, and then I think the other question is whether or not we really need to raise the cost of the paper bags.
Well, the cost of the paper bag stays at 5 cents. It's the cost of the compliant reusable bag that goes up to 25 cents.
No, a compliant reusable bag, I didn't think had a price in it. It was whatever the
10 cents
retailer wants to
before.
sell it for, no?
No, according to, well, Priya, do you want to answer that? I mean, if I'm reading this correctly, the compliant paper bag is 5 cents, and the compliant reusable bag goes from 10 cents to 25 cents. Is that correct?
Yeah. Wait, say that again, Jackie?
So,
So,
Well, maybe Priya.
I think
Priya.
that if you do decide to go forward with the amendment, just to address any concerns that Committeewoman Burstein may have, you could strike that if you feel more comfortable with it. It's an amendment, so you can really.
right, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that's important, Priya?
I do think that raising the bar, again, the purpose of it is to create a disincentive to purchase the bag as a way to ameliorate the fact that you're not getting a plastic bag.
But we have heard before that sometimes just forcing somebody to purchase, here's another 25 cents. That's a lot of labor and for the clerks and.
It's
in
just
the
a
computer.
keystroke, yeah.
It's another keystroke.
Everyone has it already built in. All the major retailers already have that built in. Even our smaller retailers have put that into their POS system. But I think it just comes down to, do you think that would just be a burden or burdensome to customers? Again, the purpose of it is to create a disincentive, but is it too severe or too onerous a burden?
I don't think so. I have changed my habits. I don't want to even spend 5 cents on a bag. I certainly want to spend 25 cents, so.
Yeah, but you have probably a fair number of people who are going to have to buy these bags in the first instance who simply don't have reusable bags. I don't know. I don't see why we should. At some point, people's habits change. Some people take longer, but everybody gets there and everybody will have to get there. The question is why we're going to charge people to get there. I don't know. I don't think it's necessary. But at the end of the day, it's whatever we ultimately decide. I just think it's not necessary to charge people to purchase their recyclable bags. I have 1,000 of them, but I was at, League of Municipalities where I picked up probably 100 bags. Not everybody has that opportunity.
So just to clarify once again, that it's the fee would be charged for the paper bag, right? And
No, for the reusable.
Reusable bag, compliant reusable.
You have it for the compliant reusable.
the
Yeah,
compliant
25
reusable
cents.
bag, and then we would and we
And
would.
5 cents for the paper, if I'm
Correct.
reading this correctly.
That
Correct.
remains the same.
Yeah.
But my point is, with the compliant reusable, why are we charging?
Because the idea is to bring your own each time.
Correct, but sometimes people forget it. And as I said, everybody's habits will change over time. Because how many reusable bags does one need after a while?
And this is an interim, to Cheryl's point, this really is an interim, this is an interim plan because won't the state's rules take over?
May 2022.
May 20, yeah. I mean, this is kind of an interim, interim measure.
What is the state charging in their,
They would eliminate bags and paper bags entirely.
would they
There would
charge
be
for?
To my
reu-
understanding, there is no fee at all. They're just outright
They're not allowed to provide any bags.
paper bags or single-use thin film
paper.
plastic bags. This is only for retailers that are larger than 2,500 square feet.
So right now, we're charging 10 cents for these compliant reusable bags. And 5 cents for paper.
And what is happening is that, so we've banned the thin film plastic bags, right? And there's a handful of retailers that are in lieu of, so they're providing basically a thicker plastic bag, which is compliant with, that adheres to the compliant bag definition. That's it. And in addition, they are providing the brown paper bags for a fee, but if you're at ShopRite and you're always used to getting a plastic bag, now you're getting a thicker plastic bag. So
But this will ban it. This will ban that thicker plastic bag, correct? The amendment.
Ours or the one by the state in May?
No, ours.
No, this has it here for 20, it has that you can charge 25 cents on the recommendation of the EC.
But those bags will no longer fit the definition of compliant bag. Correct, Priya?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I said that those plastic bags are no longer going to fit the definition of compliant bag.
Right, but they will be supplying an alternative bag, is my understanding, which is why they have the 30-day or 60-day ramp-up time to supply a compliant reusable bag that meets the definition.
Correct. All right, so we're on the same page on that. So those yellow bags are no longer going to be compliant. They won't fall, can get those after this amendment goes into effect, right?
Correct, that's what this is saying. Is
Right.
my understanding, right.
Right. So the question is, you can raise the price on paper if ultimately we're getting rid of paper, but I still don't think we should be charging, or certainly not raising the charge on compliant reusables.
Okay, so leave it at 10 cents, the way it is now. Okay.
That's my perspective.
I think, me personally, I think 60 days would be a little bit more fair to give them from the time that the ordinance is passed. So they'll have the ramp-up time prior to with the introduction of the ordinance. So it's probably going to be closer to 90 days all in, which I think is more than fair to get them with the program to adhere to our new regulation. I don't know how everybody
So the
else-
introduction will happen at the end of January, at our second meeting in January, and then be second read in February. And then we'll give them 30 days.
That's
so
what we're
it
doing in
won't-
December.
But then it would be 2 meetings. I thought we weren't doing that
We
anymore.
could, I mean, we could agree to move it next, it's a little ambitious, though, too ambitious.
Yeah.
Okay,
And you're still asking questions now.
okay.
Yeah, so then that means that it wouldn't, even if it came out in February, it wouldn't be enacted until the end of March. So I think that's more than enough time if we start letting people, or you guys start letting people know that this is coming.
Right, at that point, you have half a year,
Right, so
5 months, so.
Yeah.
that's 2022.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I have no other questions.
Thanks, Priya.
Thank
No,
you.
thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Priya.
you.
And while you're up here, Priya, do you want to talk about the composting project?
Just got revised numbers on the budget for the pilot project.
Okay, wait, start when you get up there, please. So everybody
Sorry,
can
yes,
hear.
I just received, or I just got revised numbers for the budget for this pilot project, so I made 6 copies. I'm just going to submit that.
Great.
So we have on the call Michelle Bradley and maybe Java Bradley from Java's Composting, and they are going to be presenting.
Thank you. Yep.
There they are.
Thanks.
Alex, Kit, do you want this?
Oh.
Jackie, I brought Michelle on, but I just let her know she's on and could screen share.
Michelle, if you would like to screen share, and we can proceed. Thank you.
She might be muted. I don't know if we can hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
Michelle, can you speak up, please? We can't hear you.
Can you send her a message? Yeah.
You want to go to the participant list and see if she's on as a number as well? Priya, do you know the last 4 digits of her number? No. Okay. Sometimes we don't want to close.
Does she want to call in, and we can just...
Maybe it's a computer. Priya, do you want to?
Or can we call her from one of our phones?
I think we could do that.
Yeah, if you call her and then she can just speak into the
We can put her
microphone.
on that phone.
Either, yeah, we can get her on any phone.
Yeah, why don't we get her on that phone, and we'll put her up against. Sure.
While we're trying to pull up Java's, I can give you a brief overview of the proposed project.
No, here, I'll take it.
Do you want to use this?
Just a second. The old-fashioned.
Hey, Michelle?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. We're gonna have you, if you don't mind, speak this way, but we could see your presentation, but if you could speak through here, everyone will be able to hear you.
Okay.
But you would
Maybe.
have to- Yeah, now you'd have to mute on your laptop. There you go.
Oh, I just did that. Okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry for the technology problems. So this is just going to be brief. I just wanted to kind of introduce ourselves. Bob is not here right at the moment. He's out doing a route. But we are Michelle and Java Bradley. We own this business called Java's Compost. And the mission of the business is really to get people to kind of rethink their food as a resource instead of trash. And we do that through composting, through showing them the process of composting. And we do that in these different towns. Millburn and Short Hills are definitely on our list. And we do that by providing residential and commercial compost pickup, but then we also do backyard compost consulting. So when we started the business in 2016, that's actually what we started out doing, is just backyard compost consulting. And a lot of that was because the pickup option wasn't really viable at that point, because there weren't really processing facilities that were willing to take residential food waste. So we had to just start where we could, because we were so passionate about composting at that point. We felt like everybody needed to do it. We need to spread that good news. So we ended up doing backyard compost consulting, and now we've moved into the pickup service in the last year and a half. And we've been able to divert over 220,000 pounds of food scraps from landfills and incinerators in the last year and a half. So, you know, you guys probably already know this, but your food waste either goes to a landfill or it goes to an incinerator in Newark. Neither of them are great solutions for dealing with organics, because, again, organics are really a resource. They're not trash. So I'm sure you know this already. It creates methane when it goes into a landfill, and that's why we need to compost all our food waste. So the benefit of our service is that, you know, for a drop-off program or for our pickup, we are able to take items like cheese and dairy and meat and bones. So it's really comprehensive. So there's not a lot of kind of figuring out what you can and can't compost. Any food is compostable, either with our drop-off program that we are hoping to pilot with you guys, or our pickup service. I like to show a little screenshot of the microbes and the macrobiology, because that's what makes the whole thing so interesting. Oh, my goodness, sorry. And, you know, so this is just an illustration of that. These are really the main players in composting, because these are going to break down all the food material and turn it into that nutrient-rich compost to use. So these are the yeses that you're going to be able to tell your participants. They're able to compost any type of, you know, meat, fish, beef, fruits and vegetables, obviously, breads and grains, any type of sweet. So it's very, again, comprehensive. And then, you know, a big part of the program is going to be educating, and Priya, I know, has done a lot of work around this. So basically telling people what they can't put in there. And signage is going to be key to the program to being successful, because if these items get put in the bin, it just presents a big problem. On our end, on your end, you know, we have a nice established relationship that we've worked hard with to establish over the last year and a half with the processing facility. So we want to make sure that all contaminants are kept out of the bins. So that's going to have to be a main point of the project. But everybody will get like a compost guide, and they'll, you know, very clearly see what they can and can't compost. We're going to alter it a little bit, I think, for the drop-off, because on this list we have compostable plastics, so, you know, cups and utensils, but for a drop-off program, it's going to be too difficult to monitor that and make sure that the items are BPI certified. So we've decided not to do that for the drop-off. And then I just like to end with a little slide of where the compost goes. So right now we're working with Ag Choice, which is the commercial facility in Andover, and that's really the closest facility that accepts food waste that's actually doing composting. So that's where the material goes right now. Ideally, we would love to keep it local and be able to process material locally. We just had an interesting call with the DEP today to get updated on some of the exemptions. I don't know if Priya was on that call or if any of you were, but basically they're looking at exemptions to allow for small-scale composting done, on municipal lots or community gardens. Right now, any of those types of projects are illegal, which is why there's not any happening. So this is really our only option, really, to process food material now. That's really it. Very brief.
All right,
Can you
thanks.
hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Sure.
Okay, so I just want to give kind of a brief high-level overview of the proposed pilot project. So this would be a food waste recycling project. This is something that no other towns are doing, except for, I believe, Hoboken and Jersey City currently. So this is a really exciting opportunity for Millburn to do something that very few towns in Jersey are currently doing. Basically, this is what it is. We would have one drop-off location at the town yard for household food scraps only, all right? Scraps would be picked up and transported by Java once a week. And because it's just a demonstration project, we're talking about a very limited enrollment of 55 households. Now, I just did kind of a quick and dirty sort of shout out to find out, a show of hands, and I got within a couple hours, I got 55 people to say, yeah, I'd like to do this. So if we were to open it up to the entire town, we would still want to limit it to 55 households. The project would be constrained by time. We're talking only about 6 months, so we are proposing that we would roll it out January 1st and then run it through the end of June, so for a total of 6 months. Okay, so what this project is not, this is not on-site composting. We do not do composting in this town, except for the leaves, of course, along the parkway. This would not be an on-site composting project. Java would be taking our food scraps from our residents to an industrial composting facility. I believe it's in Andover. And that's where it would be composted. So there would be no composting going on at the town yard. We are simply collecting food scraps. Again, this would not be open to the entire Millburn community. We're really using this project to kind of test out the idea of doing this and seeing if there's interest, and if we're able to achieve success, then perhaps there would be an opportunity to expand it. And it's not a free project, so we do want folks to buy into this. So we had talked initially about charging a fee of $50 to register. Now, when you compare this to a curbside pickup, like something that Java had described, this would just be a fraction of the cost. So for many folks that I've spoken to, curbside pickup is cost prohibitive. It's highly convenient, but it's not cheap. So, and then of course backyard composting is an option, but that's challenging, and you can't throw anything you want in there. You can't throw meat or dairy or that kind of thing. So the purpose of this project is to kind of, if it were sort of a Venn diagram, we're looking to find the folks that aren't being covered by the curbside programs and aren't able to do the backyard composting. This is kind of the folks in the middle who have an interest in this, but don't have the time, don't have the skills, and perhaps don't have the money to do it. So that's pretty much it. As an overview, I provided you with a budget. So there's a handful of startup costs, which would certainly involve purchasing of some bins to have at town yard. The bins would have to be locked, so we'd have to purchase those as well. And then, of course, the charge for the service for Java to do the weekly pickup. In addition to that, we would also need to purchase pails for each resident that participates in this program, along with compostable bags. Now, it is my hope to propose this project to the Environmental Commission this coming Thursday to hopefully provide some funds to underwrite the cost of this project. We've been discussing the project for the last couple months. We just haven't been able to actually talk numbers, so I'm hoping that we'll also be able to support this endeavor. So that's
How much
pretty much
money are you
it.
talking about?
In total,
I mean,
For the project?
I mean, how much money do you need to get off the ground for Millburn?
so the current budget for the project, I think you should have it on your
Oh,
paperwork.
sorry.
5,000.
Yeah.
Oh, this is it, this is the number?
543,
I got
yeah.
it, I
Right.
got it, I got it.
And then the registration fee, 55 households times 50, so that would be about $2,700, which would cut the total costs to, about $2,300. Hopefully, the Environmental Commission can also support. I don't know what our remaining balance is for the year, but hopefully we can commit all, if not some portion of that remainder towards the project.
And so the way it's laid out here, you would sign people up, they would drop it off at the recycling yard?
Yes, so
Okay.
they would have to, once they register, then
Yeah.
they would have to go through an introductory training. They would also have to basically complete a quiz that would sort of test them on some of the things that Michelle had alluded to. Because contamination is really the killer when it comes to any kind of composting project. There have been other municipalities like Princeton and Lambertville that have tried to do this same kind of project, a food scrap pickup, and they've failed because what's happened is people have put things that should not be in those bins, such as metal cans or cigarette butts, pet waste. So training is really, really critical to ensure the success of this project. So they would pay the fee, they would go to a Zoom introductory meeting, they would complete a quiz, and only after they complete those steps would they be provided with the combination for the lock. And then once a week, or however often they can get to town yard, they can go there every day if they like, except for Sunday, and they can drop off their food scraps, and then the food scraps would be collected once a week by Java.
So, do other towns have problems with animals, smell? I mean, it's bacon, and it's an assorted food group.
No, because they are in sealed bins, so they're toters, which are locked.
Okay.
And in Hoboken and Jersey City, for instance, they keep them in what are called sheds. So it's kind of like a big box with a lid on top, and then within them are the toters. We're not proposing that we buy the sheds. That would be an additional cost. We're simply talking about having toters in one dedicated spot at the town yard. Jim DeStano we've walked the yard and we've identified a spot where the toters can be located. It's close to a water supply so that the hauler can rinse out the toters after every pickup. Now, the other thing is, again, this is a training issue in that residents are not allowed to just leave their food scraps lying there, right? They have to be in a bag. The bag has to be tied. The bag that is tied has to be in the bin. They cannot just leave their bags sitting there next to the toters. And we would also have signage that would clearly say that if you are not part of this project, you cannot leave your food scraps here.
And if it was successful, would you look at expanding it to some of the businesses for drop-off, like some of our food businesses in town to participate? I'm just talking down the road. Is that what towns do?
Well, I think currently there are some businesses in town that already contract with Java to have their food scraps picked up. I think Live Breads actually does contract with Java, and I don't know of any others. But that would be a much different kind of a project or program because we're talking about a much larger quantum of waste, and that would require different trucks, different toters, all of it. So this is really meant to capture the residential market. But I mean, it would be wonderful if we could do that, if we could roll it out to businesses in town.
Yeah, that would help the environment.
Absolutely.
How about the schools? Is it too complicated for the schools? One school's back in session for real, hopefully one day.
Schools would be wonderful, but again, the contamination is a challenge. If you'd have to be able to train, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds to separate their food waste from their milk cartons and their plastic waste and their juice boxes, et cetera. So there has always been talk about food scrap collection at the schools, but I think it just comes down to leadership not leadership, but more just folks that have the time and bandwidth to do it, and training.
So, I have a question. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, the pails and the lids are really, then will become the property of these 55 registered households. That's what stays with the household, and they'll bring that back and forth in their compliant bag, and all the other equipment will be at the town, at DPW.
That is correct.
Okay. And at the end of 6 months, we're gonna look at this, evaluate, and then, and look at the financials, and how it would work.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've been talking throughout this process with Jesse Mulman, who's the recycling coordinator for the town. And so we're, the hypothesis for us is there value in diverting the food waste, which he reports is currently 20 to 30% of our municipal solid waste haul. And it's likely that it is not, but if there, it remains, it's something that could bear out after 6 months. And also if there's significant resident interest in choosing something like that, being willing to pay for it, maybe it's something that, could be part of a waste management choice program, similar to, pay as you throw, where you're really, or kind of the opposite of pay as you throw, but basically where you're able to kind of divert different types of waste at the household level in different ways, as per your choice, versus just throwing it all in the blue bin and it all being hauled away by the township hauler.
I think it's great.
Yeah,
I think it's
all
great.
good stuff.
Great.
Anybody else have any comments,
No, I
questions?
think it sounds very promising. It's definitely worth an experiment to see, because once these people sign up, they have to follow through. So I guess that's part of the 6 month.
Yes.
Will they get tired of it? Will they stop bringing their waste downtown?
Well, I think that's why we wanted to start with a group of, self-selected folks that
Right.
are super enthusiastic about this. And hopefully that will keep contamination levels to as close to zero as possible. So this is something I've been talking to Alex and Deputy Mayor Prupis about, and everyone's been very supportive of the idea and very open to it, which is great.
So what you would be asking for is if the EC doesn't have enough in their budget, is a chip in from the TC?
That is correct.
Okay.
I would just also suggest that you have the residents fill out some kind of questionnaire at the end of the 6 months, just for evaluation purposes, to see, what we could tweak or look at, or,
Yes, definitely.
great. Okay.
So do you need a commitment from us that we would be willing to provide that extra financial aid? Like now, or in January when you pass this from your EC?
Well, I hope to, our EC meeting is day after tomorrow, and so it'll just be a vote to see if we want, if everyone wants to, commit funds But like you had pointed out, it will not underwrite the entire program because it's roughly $5,000 and the registration will only cover, about 60% of that. So, Alex, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think it's more or less your consent and support of the program is your consent and support of us putting forth that
Right.
extra funding.
Well,
I say yes.
yeah.
Well, let's-
Should we
let-
take
let's-
I think, Cheryl, do you have anything you want to add or any questions? I'm sorry?
She's on mute. You're on mute.
I'm on mute, sorry. When do you anticipate assuming the EC votes to move forward with the program, when do you anticipate actually starting it?
January 1st through June 30th is the
Okay.
proposed timeframe.
Okay. I think it's great. So I, of course, would support it.
Easy.
Terrific.
Great.
Great. Well,
So I think would it-
Consensus.
unanimous?
Yes.
Everybody? Yep,
Yeah.
great.
Good
Okay.
work.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
stuff.
Thank you.
all right. Too bad the mass is obscuring my mouth.
I want to remind everyone that this is a business meeting. Township Committee, there is no place at this meeting for denigrating or discrediting fellow residents, volunteers, or committee members. There is no place at this meeting for heckling or applause. Going forward, yelling at in a crowd or showing disrespect for your neighbors or committee members will not be tolerated. If a member of the public disrupts the meeting, I will advise you that is a warning that you are disrupting the meeting, and if it continues, you will be instructed that you are preventing the business meeting from proceeding and will either be muted or asked to leave the building. Public comments will be strictly limited to 3 minutes, and when 30 seconds are remaining, Mr. Homsey will state that 30 seconds are remaining and you must conclude your public comment. Each individual will be given one opportunity to make their public comment. The committee will now consider the consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee with respect to consent agenda items 20-211 through 20-219? I just would like to bring attention to 20-217. This is to reiterate our support for the initiative with respect to the Mayor's Council on the Rollway River Flood Plan upstream storage. And this is to urge the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection to fund the studies necessary to properly evaluate the upstream storage plan and present to the City of Orange and then to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for further evaluation. Are there any comments from the public with respect to the consent agenda items only?
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld. I live at 11 Alexander Lane, Short Hills, New Jersey. I have a continuing, question or comment that's been being raised, this is about my 5th straight meeting here. The first question comes back to is, why don't we have access to the documents that are listed on the agenda 48 hours prior to the meeting? This agenda for tonight was posted at 4:30 last Friday. Why was the agenda packet only available to the public at 3 hours prior to the meeting? When you look at the bill list, it's outrageous and it shocks the conscience that there's no aggregate amount set forth on the caption of what you're approving. This goes on to every meeting. The public is entitled to know what the amounts are. In addition, I have a real big question. At the October 20th meeting, you adopted a new civic participation rule for virtual meetings. You have not complied with them. Prior to this meeting, in accordance with the rules that you adopted, I sent you basically a heads-up memo with questions. A lot of them have to do with the agenda, as to whether the public gets to speak, whether we get questions, because this is part of the record now. The question about the bill list. We allowed people to talk about the environment for about an hour. We're talking about constitutional rights now, free speech. The public is entitled to have the information and access to the documents. We've been asking, why aren't we having access to the documents 48 hours prior to the meeting? We've been asking, have you received a legal opinion? Heard nothing. The real question is the agenda. Why aren't you complying with the resolution that you adopted at the last meeting? We are entitled to answers. These questions are part of the record. They've been sent to the state.
Mayor, we have one person on Zoom who would like to be heard. Not sure if it's to the consent agenda items, but
Okay, well, let's,
it's Gene Pasternak. She should hear us, or we should be able to hear her now.
Sorry, I don't have a question on the agenda items.
She said she doesn't have it.
okay. Is that
She's gonna
it?
come back to public comment.
Okay. That's
That's
it.
it.
Anybody else in the audience that has a question with respect to the consent agenda items? May I have a motion to approve Resolution 20-211 through Resolution 20-219, which are listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Burstein?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Ms. Stahl-Eglo?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes.
Mayor Lieberberg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next is ordinance 2566-20. Ms. Burstein, you are scheduled to sponsor this ordinance.
Hold on one second. I would like to present an ordinance entitled Ordinance 2566-20, ordinance to amend and supplement the development regulations and zoning ordinance of the Township of Millburn to permit short-term rentals as an accessory use in certain residential zoning districts. The purpose of this ordinance is to make short-term rentals a permitted accessory use in certain residential zones under the zoning ordinance of the township. We recently enacted an ordinance that permits short-term rentals under certain circumstances for a certain period of time. However, in order to effectuate that ordinance, we need to permit it as an accessory use in the zones in which we are going to permit it. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, December 15th, 2020.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Burstein?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Ms. Stahl-Eglo?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes.
Mayor Lieberberg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Wasserman, you are scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2567-20.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2567-20, ordinance to amend and supplement the development regulations and zoning ordinance of the Township of Millburn and to adopt the revised official zoning map of the township. Statement of purpose. The purpose of the ordinance is to adopt a updated and revised official zoning map of the township for inclusion in the development regulations and zoning ordinance of the township to accurately depict the township zoning districts. I have a little blurb that I'll read. The purpose of the ordinance is to update the 1999 zoning map of Millburn Township, improve its appearance and legibility. The adoption of this map will ensure that any zones that were previously approved by ordinance and included in the township's code are reflected in this updated map. For example, the affordable housing zone adopted in 2018 is included in this revised map. The map has further been updated to color code the various zones in the township, which can then be included as a layer in the township open data portal through spatial data logic found on our website. The township engaged civil solutions to update the zoning map and develop the GIS layer for the township's open data portal. Any zone revisions or additions through the township ordinance will be reflected on the map and GIS through ongoing maintenance of updates. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law in the item for the hearing and final passage on Tuesday, December 15th, 2020.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Burstein?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Ms. Stahl-Eglo?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes.
Mayor Lieberberg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ordinance 2568-20. Ms. Stahl-Eglo, you are scheduled to sponsor this ordinance.
I would like to present an ordinance entitled Ordinance Number 2568-20, Capital Ordinance Authorizing the Acquisition of a New Pumper Fire Engine, partial funding and appropriating therefore the sum of $95,000 and providing that such sum so appropriated shall be raised from funds available in the Township Reserve for fire equipment. This is a capital improvement item for the firehouse, and it's within the capital budget. And I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the Township Clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item, and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, December 15th, 2020.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
May I have a roll call?
Ms. Burstein?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Ms. Stahl-Eglo?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman?
Yes.
Mayor Lieberberg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Old business. The Human Relations Advisory Committee. Back in September, the committee discussed a comprehensive approach to look at other communities and investigate and research how they organize themselves and how they address the issues of racial prejudice, discrimination, equity, and inclusion. My research included in-depth conversation and Zoom calls with communities with both well-established entities as well as those that have some ad hoc commissions and those that have separate entities, such as Maplewood South Orange. The comprehensive findings of the report were submitted to all the TC members and included discussions with Cranford, Maplewood, South Orange, Summit, Westfield, West Orange, and additional supporting materials, ordinances, memberships, and mission statements. I also had conversations with our own Millburn Short Hills Anti-Racism Task Force, and these were also included in the discussion. My discussions with the group also included their reading suggestion that was a summer reading in conjunction with the Book House and a recommendation for a town-wide read. I also spoke with many consulting firms. Some included Beyond Diversity, which took place after my report was submitted to the TC, and their focus is to help engage communities to create and improve diversity, inclusion, and equity in the community. They offer resources and programs that engage in organizational and community development, coaching, mentoring. I trust that you all have read through my report. And I'm just going to brief you with a summary of the findings. Going forward, I think that the township should look at by resolution of a mission vision that will include some of the elements that are in the Westfield and West Orange ordinances. The Westfield ordinance serve as a resource and community partner to uproot, dismantle, and eradicate hate, prejudice, racism, and bias, and to foster an inclusive, supportive environment, raise awareness, and build a community that appreciates our commonalities and celebrates our diversity. West Orange, make recommendations for the development of policies, procedures, and educational programs that will aid in the elimination of all types of discrimination, whether perceived or actual, based on race, color, creed, religion, national origin, ancestry, age, sex, marital status, physical or mental disability, or sexual orientation. I believe that this committee should be populated by the following members of the community: a Board of Ed member or the superintendent, mayor or designee, police chief or designee, a student liaison, the member of the Millburn Short Hills Faith Leaders Association, a banking official, or a realtor. The selection process, I believe, should include volunteer interest forms and the addition of 9 residents and 2 alternates, with the eye to particular engagement and participation of residents from our diverse population and ethnic groups. Among the residents, I believe a chair and a vice chair should be selected. Initially, I would think that the organization would meet monthly, formulate their goals and objectives, a forum to address issues, community outreach, programming, and educational events, including potential speaker engagements. The residential members, like Westfield, could form subcommittees for their own goals and objectives. I believe some initial funding for 2021 will cover the support for community-wide activities, workshops, professional speaking engagements, and the like. I am confident that we are a diverse community, and we should look at some of the issues and be proactive rather than reactive. We should engage in thoughtful conversation with all stakeholders that addresses our community as well as what the Westfield statement reads. Raise awareness and build a community that appreciates our commonalities and celebrates our diversity. I encourage the TC of 2021 to review these recommendations, and if anyone has any questions, to please reach out. Thank you. Does any member of the Township Committee have any questions about the report or the findings?
Do we vote to make this a TC recommendation, or is this the mayor's recommendation? I'm just curious what happens next.
This is my mayor's recommendation to the TC, and because we are in the end of the calendar year, it would be my hope and expectation that this becomes an item of attention for the new TC in 2021.
Thank you.
Well, Mayor, I would certainly support that, and I do want to tell you that I appreciate all the time you spent on all these calls to neighboring towns and all the time that you've put in. We have a diverse and loving community, and I think we have to keep focus on our diversity and our inclusion.
Ms. Eglo or Ms. Prupas, do you have any questions, comments?
Nope.
No, thank you for all your hard work. You did a lot of research. Thank you.
Does any committee member have any other item of old business to address? Does any committee member have a new business item to address? public comment. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and address, and speak loudly so your comments may be understood by all and properly recorded. There is a properly noticed remote option for those that could not attend this meeting in person. If you'd like to comment, please refer to the meeting notice on posted agenda and press *6 now. If you are attending by computer or electronic device, please raise the click your hand button. All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. Whenever an audience or committee member reads from a prepared statement, please email a copy to the township clerk. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and permit all to be heard, we limit your comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted at 30 seconds remaining. Remember, this is a business meeting, and please do not address professionals or staff directly, and please direct all comments to me. Thank you. The public comment period is now open.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Perry Urso, 506 Millburn Avenue. I direct my comments and questions to the SID Ordinance 2561-20. On November 6, 2020, we received an email from Tracy Katz-Levine, Acting Board Secretary for the SID, regarding annual meeting for Millburn Short Hills Business Organization. How is this even possible? If we don't even know if the SID is actually valid or whether the pending litigation filed within the statutory estoppel period stayed the effectiveness of the ordinance. Also on November 6, 2020, I need one more 6. A committee member has postponed their deposition to December 28th. And coincidentally, late yesterday, we received yet another notification that another committee member was not available for the next week deposition. This is truly outrageous, irresponsible. When will we get our answers? On October 22nd, 2020, Marla Itzkin, the marketing consultant for the SID, sends out an email announcing the first SID event for Explore Millburn Short Hills, known as the Halloween event. So I'd just like to kind of go on to what Mr. Wasserman was saying. Known as the Halloween event, just 8 days before the event was to be held October 30th, 2020. This event was steered by our marketing consultant, whose contract was approved without the input from the stakeholders, openly sending out flyers publicizing sponsored events by the new nonprofit District Management Corporation. Is this in fact? Has there been a determination from the IRS? This event was publicized on the patch that there were, a little correction, I wanted to be transparent, 40 participants out of the 260 plus merchants, of which 80% were from the downtown district, as well as 5 of the Board of Trustees. I ask you why, Mayor Lieberberg, committee member Mr. Wasserman, a business administrator Mr. McDonald, would you allow this to happen? You sit on that board. And whether you oversee it or not, why did she focus only on one district out of the 5? And I ask each township committee member individually, starting with Committeewoman Cheryl Burstein, Diane Eglow, Mayor Lieberberg, committee members Tara Purpose, Richard Wasserman, and the business administrator McDonald. Where was this event held within the 5 districts of the SID? Lastly, there are serious questions whether the Halloween event was a disguised campaign event in violation of the Section 501c3. Where was the event held? On October 30th? I'm sorry? I can't hear you, Alex.
The township committee
Yes,
isn't going to be...
I'm addressing each member.
No, I think the chairperson said that.
Okay, Madam Mayor, where was the event held?
The event was held on Main Street,
Main Street and what?
Millburn Avenue.
And what district is that? I'm sorry? Okay, we got our answer.
precisely why I am an objector of the SID ordinance. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Feld. You have my address. I just want to make sure that my questions that were on the non-agenda items will be answered at some point by this committee. In addition, I'd like to reach out to the community. If Thanksgiving is coming, if we have the capability, help the people that are not as fortunate, especially in this coronavirus era. Also, we should remember what happened in 1863 on Thanksgiving. That's when Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. I implore all our students and everyone in this community to go reread the Gettysburg Address, because this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's the theme for my earlier comments. We are entitled for transparency, accountability, and adherence to the rule of law.
Thank you.
First one is Dave.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Cosgrove.
Yes, thank you. David Cosgrove, 99 Oakview. I have two questions for the board. Both of them actually relate to Mr. Falcone's report or reports that he gave earlier tonight. So the first is on his report related to whether or not you folks are meeting or following proper protocols for the notice of the meetings and the provision of the materials that are going to be discussed. What I did not hear from him was any statement that prohibits you folks from providing the materials earlier than you do. I heard an opinion, and he certainly can speak for himself. I don't want to speak for him, but I heard an opinion that what you are doing meets a minimum standard. But my question for this board is, what is the reason why, given that we're all neighbors, that you want to hide these things from us, i.e., why can't you provide these materials a week in advance? And this, do you want me to ask the second one now, Mayor, or wait for the answer?
Why don't you ask the second one and then...
Okay. And the second one deals with the report relating to the settlement that you folks entered into with the Silverman Group relating to the Woodland project. And I've been trying to get this board to take a position on the rooftop decks there. And I guess my question is, does the settlement agreement that you folks negotiated and entered into with Silverman prohibit rooftop decks or not? Thank you.
Okay, as to the first, as I said earlier,
To the microphone.
oh, I'm sorry. As to the first item, as I did indicate earlier, the Township Committee is in compliance with the requirements of the law as to the notice that's given and the way it's given. The clerk has complied in every respect with the requirements of the law for providing notice and how the meetings are to be carried on. I have no opinion about what could be done or might be done or is a good idea, but there's no requirement that anything be circulated a week ahead of a meeting. It's been done in accordance with law. As to the second issue, if there is a prohibition against rooftop amenities in the agreement, I suspect you could point that out, but as a practical matter, we're really talking about two things here. The application is before the planning board. It is totally in the hands of the planning board under their jurisdiction to compare the requirements of the ordinance, the zoning ordinance that was adopted, and the application that has been presented. If there is a rooftop amenity associated with that, and I have not seen any plans, I have no familiarity with any of that, then they will address that at the planning board. If there is a provision in the settlement agreement, like all agreements that the township has with anyone, the township will insist upon compliance with the terms of the settlement agreement. But as to the particular item that you raised, There's no current need for the township to do anything as the matter is before the planning board for their consideration.
Mayor, could I follow up that, a question? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the follow-up question then on that explanation is, if the planning board allows these two rooftop decks, or one rooftop deck, it's gonna be a little too late, I think, for the township committee to then come in and say they're not allowed. And that's the worry I have.
I understand your worry. It's speculative. No one knows what the planning board is even looking at, except the two members here, of course, who are involved in reviewing the application. And the planning board will deal with that matter as it sees fit, as long as it's in compliance with the zoning ordinance. That's the key thing. What does the zoning ordinance say about this? And they'll make sure that the application is in conformance with the zoning ordinance. There's no opportunity or really appropriate way for the township committee to intervene in the planning board proceedings. That's under the jurisdiction of the planning board at the present time, and I won't really speculate at the present time as to what might happen in the future on that.
There is a current litigation that's still open that you could move to enforce the settlement agreement in.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't even know what you're referring to in the settlement agreement. But even if there is a provision in there, now is not the time. We want to wait and see what the planning board does and whether the governing body needs to enforce some provision of the settlement agreement is an issue which will wait until a later date. You apparently think that there's a prohibition in the settlement agreement against rooftop amenities. Is that your position?
Am I still muted?
No.
Okay, yes, I believe that, and I also think that was the TC's position throughout all the times the residents commented about this leading up to the settlement.
We'll see.
Any other questions from the public?
Yes, Mayor, we have one more on.
Yes, hi, Jean Pasternak, sorry, 342 Hobart Avenue. I have a couple of comments. They have to do with irregularities that I witnessed before and on Election Day last Tuesday. My goal in reporting these and putting them on the record is to prevent this type of behavior in the future and ensure that action is taken as soon as possible, given that I've reported it to both the township clerk as well as the election representative in Essex County that I was given the name of, Linda Von Nessy. First of all, on the Halloween event, I'd like to go back to that. I know this event was sponsored by the township and the local businesses. I witnessed the Democrat candidate Sanjeev Baniak handing out the Halloween bags that were paid for, contributed by those businesses, and presumably in some way sponsored by the township taxpayers. Why was a candidate for elected office of one party allowed to do this alongside you, Mayor Lieberberg? Do you agree this was a conflict of interest and put at risk the 501 status of the SID? You can answer that after I put up the second
I have
point.
no comment.
Well, I'm sure you don't have a comment, but I'd like it to be answered in some way by someone at some point, because this should not have happened. It was wrong, and it put a favorability toward one candidate of one party over all the others, and that's wrong. Secondly, I was asked to be a challenger by two different candidates for federal offices in Essex County. I arrived at the Casa Colombo polling location at around 6:30 on Tuesday evening. There were 3 violations of New Jersey election laws that I personally witnessed and have reported, and I would like them to be entered into the record of this town. I've discussed them with Christine Gaddy, and I've also reported them formally to the Essex County election person that I mentioned earlier. First of all, vote by mail ballots that were turned in on the day of the election were only to be turned in by the voter present. There were no additional ballots that were to be turned in as bearer on election day to the polling location. This location was accepting multiple ballots from an individual voter throughout the day. That was admitted by the head poll worker, and that means that there were ballots that were not legal and should not have been accepted at that location. I don't know if this happened at other locations, but I think it needs to be looked at because the person said that she was not given any instruction about what to do with those ballots, and therefore she felt it was okay to accept them. Secondly, she also, the head poll worker, also said to me that the Millburn Democrat Party chair and her husband, who is an Essex County clerk employee, appeared at the polling place together. Challengers from the same party are not allowed to appear in multiples. You can go one party, one challenger at a time. That is very concerning. Thirdly, and most troubling, at the end of the evening, there were specific instructions that were given. I heard them when I appeared at Roseland by the town clerk at that location, that the bags that were used to collect the ballots, both the provisional as well as the vote by mail, needed to be locked with Ziploc ties before they left the polling place. They were not. Secondly, the ballots were transported without the voting machine, which was removed before the 8 p.m. deadline prior by someone I don't know, but whoever appeared to collect those bags and those ballots took them away, did not go to Newark, which is exactly where every bag and every collection of ballots was supposed to go. Instead, they went to Millburn Town Hall. There were policemen at the front door preventing anyone else from entering or observing what they were doing. They took those ballot bags from all the different locations around Millburn and brought them to Town Hall, which is in violation of the procedures that were supposed to be followed by the township. I would appreciate understanding why these things were occurring on election day and before election day, and what will be done to prevent these things from occurring in the future, and what actions will be taken as with respect to the ballots that should not have been collected, and the delivery of those ballots to an improper location. Thank you.
That's it on Zoom, Mayor.
Is there any other comment from the public in the audience? May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Night.
Have a good holiday.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Two.
Thank you.